Well, look, I mean, I think it starts with I, wherever I've had the opportunity to work. I think over the years I've found that the more you can sort of meet the customer where they are, and connect your brand to their life as opposed to sort of the opposite version of that, the more successful you'll be. And I think that's more. Um, Not only critical to our success, I think it's really our reason for being at PetSmart. No one should know more about what it means to be a pet parent or be a better partner to those pet parents when it comes to taking care of their pets' needs.
Hi, I'm Andy Murray. Welcome to It's a Customer's World podcast. Now more than ever, retailers and brands are accelerating their quest to be more customer-centric. But to be truly customer-centric, it requires both a shift in mindset and ways of working, not just in marketing, but in all parts of the organization. In this podcast series, I'll be talking with practitioners, thought leaders, and scholars to hear their thoughts on what it takes to be a leader in today's customer-centric world. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. Today, I'm joined by J.K. Symancyk, the CEO of PetSmart. We'll be talking about his approach to being a customer-centric leader and how he brings clarity and insight into what his customers want. J.K. has had a remarkable career as a senior leader in retail for over 20 years. In this episode, he shares some of the learnings he's had in his leadership journey and how he keeps his finger on the pulse of what customers want. I found his emphasis on getting into stores and listening to customers, seeing what they see, and talking with associates particularly interesting, especially in a time when there is so much focus on leveraging big data and technology for insights. JK shared the importance of constantly looking for and solving customer problems worth solving as a way of keeping PetSmart relevant to the changing needs of pet owners. He also answered some student questions around career advice that I think every student entering the workforce should pay attention to. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming JK Symancyk. Hi, JK. It's great to have you on the program today. I've been looking forward to this for some time.
Well, that's great to be here. I'm glad to be able to talk.
Well, you and I have some common background, spending some of our you at the early stage, me at the late stage, had time at Walmart. And so I would love to hear, how that experience for you has shaped the way you think about retail.
Well, I mean, it's I'm older now. I realized the other day I've actually been away from Walmart longer than I was there, but I left in 2006, and from really my early days in the mid 90s and until then, I was fortunate to work with a lot of great people that I just learned a ton from. And as you know, that was such a period of growth for the company, spending half of that time in international and learning sort of, it was almost like learning retail history in real time, because each country was at a different stage of development. And, I was also fortunate that there weren't enough people around to get all of the things done. So I was thrust into a position of really doing things that I was not at all qualified for. And those of us that learned how to do it and figured out some level of success, we just got another trial or another test, as a result of sort of winning that game. And so, those 13 years were, no pun intended, but they were almost, based on my current business, like dog years, right? I mean, there was just so much that you got exposed to that I don't know that I would have ever had the opportunity to experience if I had not had that experience with Walmart.
Yeah. Well, I came into Walmart at the later stages of my career, and at the time you were just exploring and getting at Walmart, I was at Procter & Gamble, calling on Walmart back in the early 90s, and so it was a magical time of change and growth and partnership. Those were great days.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, I spent a part of the early days in Brazil, Argentina, living as an expat in Mexico, helping to build everything from a produce distribution center to you know, third party distribution that we brought, subsequently in house, helping to build out, the fresh business, which really was in its earliest days. It's such an important part of the company today. I used to beg to get, an operations leader just to spend a couple of minutes walking through a fresh area that, it was so new. And so, uh, to be a part of that build out. It was just really cool.
Yeah. Well, I spent from 2016 to 20 at Asda, and so you probably spent some
Mhm.
time in the UK.
Right.
And I will tell you, the fresh business there is just as challenging when you got so much imported, coming in, and we had to deal with Brexit and all the
Right.
changes that meant. It was quite a. I think everybody was learning like it was brand new all over again to deal with all that, for sure. But yeah, also just a tremendous learning experience. And one of the things you're doing now, obviously, is the CEO of PetSmart, and it's quite an impressive role you have with that. I've noticed that you've really talk a lot and think a lot about being customer centric, and I'm a long term PetSmart shopper. There's one near our house with many years of putting of caring for our dogs through the PetSmart experience. And when I think about PetSmart, I do think about some of the customer centric things that you guys have done, whether it's the trait loyalty program, adoption services, in store pet training, probably a number of other things too that I'm missing. So, given that this program's really about being customer centric, I'd love to hear your thoughts about when I say being customer centric, what does that mean to you and how do you manifest that as the CEO?
Well, look, I mean, I think it starts with um, wherever I've had the opportunity to work. I think over the years, I've found that, the more you can sort of meet the customer where they are, and connect your brand to their life as opposed to sort of the opposite version of that, the more successful you'll be. And I think that's more um, not only critical to our success, I think it's really our reason for being at PetSmart. No one should know more about what it means to be a pet parent or be a better partner to those pet parents when it comes to taking care of their pets' needs. The pet industry is a wonderful business. 90 plus million households compared to, think about, I'm sure in your P&G days, baby was a big part of the business, and that's about 30 million households. So, when you think about the pet space, it is one of the most evergreen consumer growth spaces there are, and it really runs on premiumization, humanization. Our pets have moved from our yards into our homes, into our beds, and they really are a family. And so a lot of people play in that space, and a lot of people can sort of cover needs transactionally. If PetSmart is going to be relevant and growing the way that we have been, it's going to be because we not only are the best at providing solutions to the things that you already need or the questions that you may already have, but we've got to be out in front and anticipating what those needs may be for you or what those wants may be for you, um, you know, over the next 1, 3, 5 years. And you can't do that unless you are intrinsically connected to your customers and are the biggest champions for their passions and the biggest solvers of their problems. I think if specialty retail is going to have a place, that's going to be what it is. Otherwise, if it's about convenience or some other lever of value, there's probably somebody else that's going to fill that need.
Well, you make it sound fairly intuitive and obvious and easy, but if you're listening from outside of retail, you say, well, yeah, of course, that makes sense. But, from my experience inside of retail, what you just said is not easy to do because there's a lot of operational pressures, competing priorities, and if you're on the exec team trying to be that type of leader to line it up against that, that's not as easy as it sounds because you do have operational hours. You can think about all the things that retailers have to harmonize in order to do what you just said when the P&L may not always push you in that direction, you know? So do you lead this from the top as a corporate priority, or is this something that's just so in the culture you don't really have those kind of challenges?
No, look, I think it starts in our company with a connection to culture and values that really do believe that, you know, pets make us better people, and anything we can do to help deepen that connection with your pet, uh, that's our purpose. And so, I think having that kind of foundational uh, set of principles and that mission driving our organization really does make it easier. And I think it if you've seen any of our work, one of the things you'll see us talk about all the time is anything for pets. It's more than a tagline. It really is something that ties back to our mission, vision, and purpose in a way that I think holds us accountable to that idea. To your point, there's stuff that happens, it on any Tuesday at 3 o'clock when that particular fire pops up. It's hard to say, oh no, let's look at our mission, vision, values one more time before we make that decision. I mean, the reality of doing business, I think, is always a competing pressure. But if you hire to that mission and you have people who are aligned to those values, more times than not, if we're stepping outside of it, there's somebody to raise the question. And you know, I'd love to say we're perfect, but when we're not, I'm even prouder of the fact that because we believe in that, there's more likely than not somebody who's going to raise their hand and say, "Hey, is this really what we should be doing?" And I think the benefit of having that that alignment is we also come into it, looking at our customers' shopping experience and the way that they live their lives a little bit differently than other people who are in this space, and that does manifest itself not just in the stuff that we sell, but we are the largest provider of care for pets in North America. The most doggy daycare, hotel stays, salon and grooming. We have the largest number of veterinarian, hospitals in our stores. And so that kind of connective, one-stop shop, if you will, to be your partner and to be able to meet a customer at whatever moment in their life we can provide that value, I think is something that, we take very seriously, but it does force accountability. When you say you're going to be meaningful in all those places, you can't take a day off. And I think that conveys a set of responsibilities that our team really does relish and respect, in almost everything we do. Not perfect, but we get a lot of it right. And I'm really proud of the work everybody does to deliver against that.
Interesting, JK. I wonder how much of what you're describing are a set of values that could be applied to any retailer that purposes themselves in that direction versus it's just the nature of a pet category that's a specialty channel where you've got a certain type of customer base. If you think back through all your different retail experiences, what do you think that is? Where do you think that line is? Do you think it is a set of principles about how you treat the customer that could go beyond the category that you're in per se because of the nature of that category?
Yeah, look, Andy, I think that's a great question. I would answer it probably two ways. I think there are, a lot of good retailers, people that I respect, both peers, but also competitors who may have their own version of answering that question, that have those two or three things that is so ingrained in what they do. They're on the tablets, so to speak, and people know this is who we are and we can't deviate from it. And and for them, that's the unlock. I mean, it's kind of a dated reference, but if you remember City Slickers, it's their one thing, right? And um, for us, I really do think it is that love of pets. And look, a lot of people can talk about it. Nobody else actually can deliver on that promise of, caring for your pets as if they're our own. No one else who is in this space, no matter how passionate they are around it, has as many pets coming in to be a part of that shopping experience. Nobody else thinks about a display and, I mean, pardon me, but wonders if it's going to be interactive with a pet, or would it potentially be a pee trap, right? Like, I mean, you have to think about those, that's the reality of bringing a dog into a store. And I say dog because I don't know that many customers who bring their cats with them. A few, but dogs are a little bit easier. There's nobody else that you know has connected as many people and pets through adoption as what we have. We are the largest animal welfare donor in North America. Um, that there, when you have all of those points of connection, it really does, I think, bring our mission to life in a way that is uniquely our own. I won't say we're better at being mission oriented than other retailers. We're just better at that mission than other retailers.
With omnichannel being the topic on so many retailers' minds and brand marketers and such, one might think the role of the physical store is in decline, but I think from your perspective that you'd probably see I can't imagine a PetSmart experience that's just totally online. I mean, the store is such an important part of the experience that we love taking our dog into. How do you see the omnichannel world evolving within PetSmart?
For us, it really is about I've kind of evolved over time. I mean, you look at market share and where growth is and isn't, and I think you can fall into that trap. The unlock for us was really thinking about how do we evolve our business to meet our customers wherever and however they want to shop us. And we recognize, even from my own personal experience as a shopper, that's likely to be different ways depending on what my needs are, right? I mean, the very person who is coming in every day to drop their dog off for doggy daycare may want a buy online, pick up in store experience because that's just convenient for them, right? And so the we really are agnostic. We want the experience to be great no matter how it is, and we try to think about the ways to deploy technology to facilitate the easiest but also most personal experience for you that we can. And I think we were I think later adopters as a company of thinking about e-commerce as it relates to goods, and have done a nice job of evolving to solve customer needs there better. We were earlier adopters and leaders as it relates to services, and even thinking about, look, if you book your pets for a grooming appointment, how might you navigate that experience? Well, you may think about your schedule, so time and availability is important. But the other thing is, look, if you're really bringing your pet in to be groomed, you're doing business with PetSmart, but you're doing business with a groomer. You're doing business with somebody that you trust to care for your pet. And so building the navigation that allows you to look at their schedule, because, I mean, I wouldn't know this, but like my wife, I've got, 7 sisters. They will amend their schedule like crazy when their their hair specialist has availability, because once you find that person, you don't want, you'll, obviously I didn't take that. I have to live vicariously through them. The same is true with your dog, right? Like you can see, you can see pictures of mine in the background. They go to Holly. Before that, they went to Nurivan in Houston. But and I I told people I shopped at PetSmart, but I also had that relationship with my grower. And so building the technology that allowed for that personalization to orient around you as a customer, the person that you work with, be it a trainer or a groomer or whatever, or orienting around your pet, was a unique challenge, but one that we felt was important for us to solve, because that's what being customer centric in our space looks like.
I've always felt that understanding the customer problem and which one's worth solving is your best starting point for real innovation. I mean, how do you find those customer problems worth solving? Because not every customer problem can you afford to solve. Is strategically on point for you to solve, but a lot of them are, and it's not always easy understanding what is it the customer really wants and what will work at scale. How do you kind of go after that to find those problems worth solving?
I mean, it's maybe a simple and fairly unoriginal answer. Just go ask questions. Truthfully, this is where, even as it relates to digital innovation, our best unlocks and the best, kind of simple solutions that we've delivered have actually come when we go to a store and we talk to customers. It's and also, maybe even more importantly in this case, talking to our associates who, are sort of blending their own experience about what does and doesn't work with what they're hearing from customers in a way that's real time, organic, and not filtered because there's some guy in a sport coat or gal, who's from the headquarters asking that question, but it's just real honest feedback.
Well, what a beautiful segue to what I wanted to cover next, in that I've been working with the University of Arkansas, Molly Rapert's marketing class, and she just had, I think, 35 students do store walks in the pet category with a handful of different retailers, PetSmart being one of them. And I had an opportunity to coach them ahead of time how to think about a store walk to get the most out of it. And then they went and did it with buyers at different retailers and put some real interesting thoughts together. And I think the thing that really impressed me about that is, exactly to your point, the best insights come from just getting in the store and walking a store and getting and thinking about, how would a first-time cat owner think about cat litter and what problem there might be solving versus an experienced user. And so, any thoughts that you might have on how to get the most out of a store walk when you go walk a store? What are you looking for, and how do you process that so that when students do it the next time, we can come back to this clip and say, hey, here's how the CEO thinks about it. If you don't think this is an important task, think again.
Look, it's harder and harder for me in this role to get a real honest store walk. I mean, when I go to a store, I'm one of my first priorities is to spend time with that store team, and there's, I'm not naive. There's a little bit of prep that comes whenever I'm showing up that is, more about them being able to showcase their work. And I think it's harder sometimes to get the kind of customer insights that I could get if I was just, throwing on a ball cap and walking in on a random Saturday with nobody knowing who I am. But, that said, I think, one, I really do, if I'm trying to learn something, I try to come in and spend some amount of time thinking about, okay, what if I was shopping this, right? Like, and in particular, I like to sort of map what I think a customer journey might look like in a store. And in our in our business, great. There's the quick, sort of, I'm bringing somebody in for services and I want to pick something up. There's the stock up fill. There's a little bit of our business that looks like grocery. There's also, though, kind of the big life decision journey, right? If I'm coming in and I'm going to buy, a setup to move into the specialty pet space, which is what we call everything that's non-dog and cat. Could be aquatic, reptile. I mean, I'm guessing you've got a few questions if you're going to bring a bearded dragon into your home, and you want to know, like, what do I need to do to take care of it? How do they feel? What's that experience like? And so, you know, that really is one of the, that how do I solve a question that somebody has is probably the single biggest test of a shopping experience in our store. And I think the way we've evolved over time is to try to figure out how to make as much of that self-service facilitated in nature, not because we don't want the interaction with a team member. On the contrary, we really do. But as more and more people are using this to navigate their daily life, there's some subset of customers that'll never ask you a question. They would prefer to deal with their device than deal with a person. Or they don't want to interact with you until they feel like they've done some level of cursory work. Like, I want to have a smart question, right? And so, building in, like, I've learned a lot by coming in and being able to think through what does that look like, and we still got a lot of work to do in that space. I mean, it's probably the one area where we get the toughest questions. The internet is unreliable. I've got a team of veterinarians that are really, mapping solutions, not only for our store teams, but, for you as a customer, that first and foremost ensure the safety and health of the pet. And ultimately, then, if that's what we deliver, then you're going to have a good experience as a pet parent, and you're going to want to deepen that relationship or move deeper into the hobby of specialty. And so that's how we think about it. And I think, resetting and kind of mapping customer journeys through some very specific, what's my list? How would I come in and shop this? That's the most valuable way I think you can walk a store.
I love that you've prioritized learning about the customer through what would seem like a very simple and accessible task of figure out a customer journey, go walk the store with that in mind. That's something every student graduating has access to and might find through fresh eyes, insights that, a lot of in their minds might think, well, I'd have to work there 10 years to add value. But no, not necessarily. It's those fresh eyes that can be really insightful. And you really did a good job explaining that. We did have a couple of students ask throw some questions your way that I'd love to run them by you real quick while I have you. One is from Sadie Nosol, and she is a marketing major. She's going to be moving to New Jersey, and she asked a question, said, in a few months, I'm moving across the country to New Jersey, someplace I've never lived before. You've moved from Arkansas to Michigan to Arizona. What advice do you have for making the most out of moving to a new place and starting a new part of your career?
It's funny. The best advice I can give anybody who's moving is love where you're going. Find something to love about it. I think, secret to us, and we really have loved each community we've lived in, but it's because we really made a point to discover what made that place great. I remember early on, and I learned this actually working at Walmart. Northwest Arkansas looks a lot different today than it did in the 90s and early 2000s. And it was a tough place to get people to move to. And the people that I saw who did that well were the people who embraced what there was there at the time and found things to love about it. It might be the Razorbacks, it might be living outdoors, it might be, just people. It was a great place to raise a family. The people that struggled were the people who found themselves comparing what the place they came from had that this place didn't. And I think, there's things about New Jersey that are only there in New Jersey, and if that's where you're going, I think I say lean into it and go find what you can be passionate about. People ask me what's my favorite NFL team, and it's the home team. Right
Yeah.
now, it's the Arizona Cardinals. That's hard. That's hard to do.
Yeah.
My time in Michigan trained me because
Yeah.
it was the Detroit Lions that.
Yeah.
So, but I think that, don't look back, look forward. I mean, it's simple advice, but if you lean into that experience, then, you'll find things you love about it. And actually, I think you'll be way more productive. You're going to be more successful, both personally and professionally, because you lean into, there's a reason you're going there in the first place. Reasons to love it.
That's a great way to think about it. Second last question is from a Macy Wheeler. She's going to be looking to join Accenture as a consulting analyst, major in marketing.
Good Lord.
Yeah, she said, you have had an amazing career working with major companies in a variety of different industries. When transferring from leading one large company to another, what commonalities in your experience have you found? What has been the biggest change in terms of culture or processes?
Um, look, it's a really good question. I think the commonality is, you do good work with good people. At the end of the day, um, it's a little, it's a little weird for me because I've moved companies, at least a couple of them, as the CEO, and I think, the thing that I've tried to do in each case is respect that I'm joining a culture that exists. Like it, I I I hopefully bring something to it, but I think people in my position often think, okay, well, I'm the new leader. I get to rewrite the values and do those, and that's just not the way the world works. Like I loved PetSmart as a customer, and I respected what it stood for and was proud to be joining that, and also recognized that, at the time I joined the company, maybe the culture wasn't as strong as it could be, and maybe we had lost our way. And so part of my job was maybe to help restore that. It wasn't, it was to add some strength to something that was already there, and not recreate it or reshape it or anything like that. And so, I think the way that you do that and the way that you ultimately find the most success, personally, is attach yourself to great people and find out, what they're doing, how they're doing it, and jump into it, particularly when you're at you're starting out. I mean, I think that was one of you'd asked me earlier about Walmart. I mean, that was one of the benefits of being a part of Walmart at that point in time is, you had a chance to draft along with some great people and get experiences you just wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the things I learned at Walmart is how to ask better questions. I mean, I was always told, pay attention to the questions the leaders ask. And actually teaching through questions was a powerful learning for me that's really stuck with me.
No, look, I cannot agree more. And I will tell you, I'm probably tipping my hand here. I interview a lot of people. I rarely make decisions based off of the resume. I rarely make decisions based on how they've answered the questions I have for them. I learn more about how somebody thinks and what their talent level is by the kinds of questions they ask me, and then the subsequent discussion that comes from those questions, because that's real. That's, that you can't prep for that. It is the truest, most honest view that I get of a candidate, um, you know, interviewing at this level. And I would tell you, the better the question, frankly, the smarter the person. And so I couldn't agree more.
Molly's going to not believe this because that's exactly what I've been telling the students when we talking about, what a good interview looks like. And I said the exact same thing, which is I listen for the questions you ask. And I don't know how many people I've interviewed, JK, where I was the last one in the chain, and perhaps,
Yeah.
and I would say, what questions do you have for me? And they would say, well, your team's done a great job of briefing me. I'm good. And it's just sad because of like, seriously, like maybe something is like, what are you curious about yourself, in the future? I just find it shocking. And I really encourage students, be brave, ask questions. It shows you curious about humanity. I mean, you should have loads of questions, right? Am I getting that right?
Oh, 100%. I've got both of my kids are students
Yeah.
at part of the Walton College.
Yeah.
My son's a sophomore. My daughter's graduating here in just a couple of days. And
Congratulations.
thank you. No, so congratulations to her. She's
Yeah.
done a great job. They're both great kids. But the two pieces of advice that I've given them is they think about what they want to do and moving into this space. One, from an interview standpoint, is they've asked me questions about, what should I do? And the only thing I spend time with them on is tell me what questions you're going to ask somebody. And they've even said, well, you know, how should I answer this? You'll answer that. I'm not worried. I'm not going to coach you on how to answer a question. You answer it honestly. Tell me what questions you're going to ask that person. And the only other piece of advice I give them is, look, the only kind of jobs you should be thinking about are it's either with people that you really like and respect and you're going to learn something from, or it's in a space that you really, really love. And you know, all the other stuff, what you make, what the career path looks like, etc. If you work on those two things first, the other stuff will take care of itself. If you think of it in reverse order, chances are you will not be as successful and you certainly will not be as happy. But if, as complex as the world is today, you've got a greater likelihood of being successful if you are doing what you love and or doing it with people that you respect and are going to learn from and that you care about.
I love that.
Yeah.
That is such good advice to think of it that way. And I often get asked the question, what if I don't get the perfect job out of college? This is one of the questions I wanted to ask you because you came from a theater major,
Yeah.
right? And some might find that odd, but from my experience in retail, I'm around a lot of actors, right? And actually the CEOs that could storytell, I would have killed to have had a theater degree, right? So how is that connect? How have you connected the dots from even something like that might feel as off direction as that when it's not?
I get asked, the irony is I get asked the question a lot, right? And I joke, I read an article a while back that, something like 2% of CEOs have a liberal arts degree. The only one that I know of that's actually got a theater degree was Michael Eisner, and it worked out pretty well for him. But Howard Schultz has a communications degree. I mean, there's a few out there, but like 2% of CEOs have a liberal arts degree. 8% have no degree. So I mean, apparently you're better off dropping out than having a liberal arts degree if you want to be a CEO. But I think you nailed it. For me, I think there's certain things that that have been true. As a merchant, as a marketer, and as a leader, the power of storytelling is indispensable. When I was a buyer, DMM, working the merchandise space, an assortment and what you put in front of customers in form of goods was the story that you were telling. And if it didn't hold together cohesively and there wasn't action and purpose behind its reason to be there, and you didn't have compelling characters, then chances are you weren't going to like what your P&L looked like. And as a, as a marketer, um, you know, you you're sort of breaking the fourth wall and connecting directly with the customer to try to assemble those stories in a way that is more compelling and that they can decode. And, even as a leader, I think the ability to sort of, Ronald Reagan, when he was, running for president, was asked, hey, why would we want an actor as president? And I won't get the quote right, but he said something to the effect of, an actor's got to know, actors got to be good at two things. Got to be honest and real, and you've got to be connected to your audience. And those are pretty good things for a politician to have too. I'd say the same for a leader. And so yeah, I think it's. I will say too, for me, early on at Walmart, and for those that are listening who don't understand or haven't been exposed to it, I mean, a Friday or Saturday morning meeting at the time where you're sitting in an auditorium and you've got 1,000 or so people and you're on video and everything else, and you're getting asked a question about your business and somebody's thrusting a microphone in front of your face. For me, look, that wasn't intimidating. I mean, it gave me a chance to be the best version of myself I could be. And having that ability to sort of be vulnerable and stand in front of a group of people and not worry about the judgment or be intimidated or any of that sort of stuff. That was, I mean, that did, I think, give me a little bit of a head start. And I think over time, and I would say this to anybody who's a student who may be thinking about it today, technology is awesome. And there's so many ways that the world is more complex and so many more tools at your disposal today. However, with all of that and with all of that communication, the ability to connect live with people is more and more rare. And I think that, the understanding of that and the value of real interpersonal human connection, be it as a coworker, with customers, or as a leader, my respect for that and the fact that that's a part of what I've always, studied or enjoyed, and the human element of that, as it turns out, it's just more valuable today because it's not something that everybody does. And I, the more you can sort of, look up from your device and connect with people in the real world, I think the more you will separate yourself as a leader. And, whether that's business leader, people leader, whatever, that is the real unlock. And I didn't know that as I started my career, but I've benefited from it, and I look for it in leaders today. I'm a little more deliberate about it, but I'm thankful for that being a part of my background, because it certainly suited me well in my business.
Well, I would encourage anyone to get a theater degree, at least a few theater courses under your belt in any kind of business. I mean, you brought back some horrific memories of fear and terror in the Saturday morning meetings when you're as simple as, Andy, lead the cheer. And how can you forget
And
a Walmart cheer is the most simple thing, but when you're put on the spot to give it and you forget, like I did twice, like this is going to be impossible to forget. No, the pressure of that, right?
being the squiggly is a humbling moment. It's
Well, forgetting what happens after the squiggly, which is because your brain has been disconnected on the squiggly, is really kind of comical, and it happens to every single leader that's ever had to go up in front of a couple thousand people and lead those cheers. But you're right. I mean, I think it's the empathy you learn. I had several. I was a part of the thespian team in high school, and it was really a valuable experience, because I think if you connect to people today at this human level, especially with all the technology, I say go for it, especially liberal arts, whether it's art history, what is true, good, and beautiful, and look at the history of that, because it informs what's beautiful today. And those principles are not coming from technology, they're coming from the humanities.
No, it's true. Albert Einstein, said a lot of smart things, but when people were dismissive of liberal arts education, his quote was that, the value of liberal arts education is that it is not that, and I'll butcher it, but it's not that you learn facts that you can write in a book. It's that it teaches you how to think about things that cannot be written in a book. And I, I think leaning into that, and that said, what I did have to do and was very fortunate is I got to own a business early on, and there's no better education than having to answer for a P&L, and to I remember uh, part of a key leader group meeting, asking Lee Scott if the company would support me going back to get an MBA, and that wasn't, we didn't have that kind of development back then. They think about it differently today, obviously, but I remember Lee said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, I just, I'm theater degree. I don't, I feel like maybe I'm missing something." He's like, "You're running an $8 billion business, and here's all this other stuff you do. Like, if you want an MBA, go get it for you. Yeah, we'll support you." He goes, "But don't feel like you need to do that to prove anything to the company or to anybody else, because you're doing more and have learned more than you will learn in a program like that." And that was the benefit of being in that business at that point in time. I certainly, don't say that to disparage an MBA. I applaud anybody who's doing that, but I also think it's one of the reasons why it's valuable that you go get experience and then come back and do it, because you appreciate that learning so much more. It really, I got my education a little bit differently, but theater certainly hasn't been a liability. It,
Now,
it's
but
really
how many leadership retreats today start with some improv? Uh, Person comes in, right? And you're like,
yeah,
I could have told you that, right?
yes, yeah. Sign me up.
Sign me up. JK, this has been an amazing conversation. I guess I'd ask one last question. As you look out into the future, what gives you hope? What gets you excited about what lies ahead?
I got a lot of hope. I mean, it's easy to be a glass half full guy when you're surrounded by puppies most of the day, right? I mean, I
You're not talking the leadership, right? You're talking the real puppies. Yeah.
both. I mean, in our
Yeah.
office, we've got 1,600 people and 1,000 pets at any point in time. So it's a cool place to work, and I say that sort of tongue in cheek. Look, I do. I work in a space where I get to see um, the love that people have for their pets, and no matter how uh, frustrating or messy the real world gets, and no matter how much we may spin up on issues or there may be division, um, I happen to be professionally dedicated to something that um, everybody tends to agree on. I do a little bit of work with RELA, and I joke all the time if I'm ever having to meet with politicians that I need to just bring puppies, because like make everybody hold a puppy as they debate the debt ceiling or whatever else, because you can't call somebody a name when they're holding a puppy, like that's but that is what gives me hope. I mean, I do get a chance to interact with people, generally when they're in some of their best moments, and the fact that we, you know, uh, certainly operate a good business and work with a lot of talented people, but the fact that we're able to provide some value and service to people in a space where they may have a question about how to love their pet the best, or when they may have a problem to solve, or even when they're first looking to get a pet and they're trying to bring that into their life. I mean, there's a lot of hope that surrounds those moments, and really does, make me believe that no matter how much more complex and complicated things get, that there are these things that bind us together as humans, and as if we can, one of the things that we talk a lot about in our culture is for us to be at our best together, we have to show up thinking about what we owe others before we think about what we're owed. And I love being a part of a team that, we're not perfect, but when you get to work with people who more than not, show up with that in mind and do so with the kind of, commitment to supporting pets and pet parents our team does, it really does make for a lot of good days.
Wow, I love it. I love so many of what the concepts you just shared, especially how about putting some puppies in with the debates and arguments and see where that goes, because there is something about that, man, that you just cannot deny the power of what that means. And a little bit of love goes a long way to soften the world a bit. You've been tremendous, JK, very generous of your time. Love the advice you've given to students about how to think about questions. If I go back to that one element, that is one I'm going to continue to preach and help counsel on, is that learn to ask the questions in life, and not just when you start, but all the way through your career. Never stop asking questions, whether it's a store walk or many other ways that you mentioned asking questions. At the root of it, it was being curious and asking the right questions.
Yeah.
So,
no, thank you.
Thank you, and really enjoyed it. And we'll make sure that the students get a chance to hear all the good stuff that you just shared.
No, thanks for the time, and thanks for the questions. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk.
That's it for this episode of It's a Customer's World. If you found this helpful and entertaining, I would be so grateful if you could share our show with your friends, and I'd be super happy if you subscribe so you can be updated as we publish new episodes. And if you really want to help, leave us a 5-star rating and a positive review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen. It's a Customer's World podcast is a product of the University of Arkansas's Customer-Centric Leadership Initiative and a Walton College original production.